Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining today's town hall virtual meeting, and thanks for joining us today. My name is Pat Getz. I'm an account executive here at CureWorks, and I'll be today's moderator and MC guiding our conversations today and discussions. I'm joined by John Swisher and Zach Tabor of our product development team at CureWorks. And I know we have some of our customers online today. Thank you for joining us. And for those of you who aren't familiar with CureWorks, we are a technology solution provider. We design software solutions that help automate processes and really eliminate all of the manual effort as it relates to dealing with Medicare and Medicaid and commercial and most relevant, the CMS guidelines. So how did we decide on this topic? It's really a continuation of the recent RISE conference last June. Our good friends at the RISE, they had the 5th annual Optimizing Appeals and Grievances Summit, and both John and Zach spoke at that conference, and it really resonated. There was a lot of conversation and a lot of questions about the recent changes for 2020 and 2021. So we wanted to just continue the conversation. It's a great community of users. I highly recommend you guys attending maybe next year's session, and hopefully that one will be on site. But really, why are we here? What is the purpose? It's really to get a handle on this, and what you're seeing on the screen is just a crosswalk from year to year, really breaking down each table, all of those changes of what they were the previous year and what they're going to be going forward. This is where a lot of our customers spend some time reviewing the documentation that we provide to our users, and we're going to be asking John and Zach some questions today as far as how we manage that and how we allow organizations to take a more of an offensive, a proactive approach of really tackling all of these changes. And then organizationally, what does CureWorks do? We really help healthcare payer and provider organizations across these 3 buckets, be it market demands and regulatory compliance, which we're going to talk about today, or just the operational efficiencies that we hear a lot of demands from customers where there are a lot of manual processes. It could just be a business initiative that your organization is moving forward. And then last but not least, there's always some challenges on the IT side and dealing with some legacy systems, some legacy applications, and really giving users and directors and managers within the compliance team or in the A&G team control of their ability to make changes, and just giving them more agility to keep up with the ongoing pace and changes that CMS puts forward. So that's great, fine and dandy, Pat, from an organizational, but what is it? What's in it for you individually? So here are specifically some of the challenges we help users and roles similar to yourselves on today's call that we help. So maybe it's just a visibility issue. It's really challenging to see all of the caseload or work or universe table data, and we want to provide better access to that information. Or maybe it's just generating, it's one thing being able to see it, but just being able to have that push button on demand table, CDAG or ODAG table, what have you. We help organizations do that. And then it just comes down to quality issues. If it's manual, there's going to be some errors. And then that agility piece of really giving you the ability not to rely on your IT department to keep up with those ongoing demands or reporting requests, and not having to rely on a software vendor that maybe manages your appeals and grievances or your universe tables today. But we want to provide you kind of that driver's seat, grab the steering wheel, and be able to own that system so you can be proactive. So we're going to open it up now to the roundtable discussion with John and Zach. I know a few of today's attendees have submitted some questions ahead of time. So I do ask, or we want to ask everybody, if you do have a question, to just kindly raise your hand in the chat session, and we will unmute you, and you can ask questions, or feel free to send your questions in the chat dialog box there. But John, Zach, hello, thanks for joining us. How you guys doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm working obviously from the comfort of my home office. My commute's a lot shorter these days.
Very good. How about a quick little introduction, John, for everybody on today's call? Can you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I manage the solution development at CureWorks. Our solution development team is primarily focused in the healthcare payer space. So obviously here today we're talking about appeals and grievances, particularly in the Medicare space. But we also have solutions in the Medicaid and commercial spaces as well. And while they're payer directed at payers, we do have provider-based solutions as well. So if you think about your network development, your contracting, your provider outreach, your attestations, that's really what our team focuses on. And I'll let Zach introduce himself, but he's our lead developer on the appeals and grievances side.
Yep, thanks, John. Yeah, I'm Zach Tabor. I'm a senior product engineer at CareerWorks. Like John was saying, I'm the lead developer and engineer on the A&G side. So I've been in the A&G world, building our solution, modifying it, added functionality. Really, just recently dug into these new universe tables that we'll be talking about since CMS just released them and made those upgrades to our solution as well. So that's been a big main focus of what I've been doing here at CareerWorks.
Well, great. Thank you, John and Zach. Let's just jump right in here. And this is a very common question that we did receive in preparation of today's webinar. But from a CareWorks standpoint, and from you guys on the IT and product design, can you just go over at a high level the recent changes CMS has made in regards to the 2020 and 2021, and really break that down? What does that mean for everyone?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it first. So if we think about the changes overall for the 2021 universe, they're not as drastic as the 2021 draft. The 2021 is condensed a lot of different tables that were previously split between standard and expedited. And with that condensing, they've changed a lot of the ways those dates and times, particularly the times, are being reported. On the 2020 side, and again, that 2021 is just in draft format right now, but on the 2020 side, not a ton of changes. There were two CDAG tables that were essentially removed, and they were moved down. But for the most part, the tables are relatively the same. Some of the descriptions and the field names in general, or the columns, are a bit different. We've went from cardholder ID to enrollee ID, and the description of that is a little bit different. So some of you may already be using the enrollee ID, so there's not really a change there. But then also, things like what cases even get included, right? So if we look closely at the 2020 spec, the vast majority of those universe tables now exclude withdrawn cases. So that's something important to remember, because if you're putting those in there, they're not required. And the more information, more cases you're putting in there, the more opportunity you have for failing an audit or getting dinged on that particular item. Some of the other, there are a few fields that were just removed, and maybe where there was just further clarification on the description as well. If we think about, there's some additional information in the diagnosis area, and how dates are put in based off of the priority. Zach, I don't know if anything, since you've been in the trenches putting those all together, anything else stick out that I may have missed?
Yeah, a lot of it was more of, you've hit everything that I wanted to go over. Some of them, they just cleaned up the descriptions a lot of some of the fields themselves. And then for those of you guys wondering, we were trying to get ahead of the game when the 2020 ones were released because we knew based off the 2017 ODAG and CDAG universe documents, they were set to expire April 30th of 2020. But then we all got to face the reality of COVID-19 and everything got delayed a little bit. So they actually didn't just release the 2020 documentation on their program audits website until I believe June 30th. So once that came out, we kind of got ahead of the game, and then we were able to compare all the 2017 to the 2020 to see exactly what those changes were and get those changes documented.
Got it. Thanks, guys. That was a lot of information, a lot of details that you just shared. What, in your opinion, what's maybe the most critical, or for the audience and those of you on today's call, how can we help prioritize and kind of tackle these changes? What would you say would be the first step in managing these changes? Or the most critical?
Well, I may be beating you to the punch on this one, Pat. So stop me if I'm ruining it for you. But if you already have the CureWorks solution in house, there isn't a ton for you to do. If you're already an existing CureWorks customer, you'll be receiving that 2017 to 2020 crosswalk very shortly, which is it's an Excel spreadsheet that we put together because we have to keep our product up to date, obviously. But we'll provide that crosswalk for you, even if, like this year, CMS didn't provide one. And then you have the ability to easily make those changes in your system, or you can contract with us for a small amount of time in order to simply update your system. So from that standpoint, you're all set. Now, if you are not a CureWorks customer, I think the big ones are, again, reset how those are being pulled so you're excluding the withdrawn cases. Make sure that you are actually using your Medicare beneficiary identifier as opposed to maybe an internal member ID. And then pay close attention to the descriptions on how the dates and times are reported, because some of those now we don't need to put times in. And then lastly, ensure that for the 2 tables that have been removed, you're effectively relabeling those or making sure they're showing up in the correct table on the CDAG side.
Got it. Thanks, John. Zach, did you want to chime in or jump in on there?
Yeah, like John kind of hit them all.
All right.
The big one I would say that because they're actually removing tables on the CDAG side, so you make sure that those are actually reporting to the correct table number now, because those tables that were at the end, tables like 14, 15, have now shifted up 2 spots because they removed 2 of those tables.
Got it.
And one more thing, Pat, it just popped in my head, but it's always the last thing that folks think of when they think about reports, right? Is the name of the report or the label of the report. The hard stuff is getting the correct data into it, right? And if you go and do all that work and you're updating those tables, make sure you're updating the labels as well, because while the same data may be in there from your previous years, the column name may have changed. And a good one for those who are already using the MBI, right? It is now, again, enrollee ID instead of cardholder ID. So make sure that you don't forget those after you've done the hard stuff.
Good one. And just so everybody who's on today's call, if you do have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or send your questions in the chat box. We received a couple of questions ahead of time, so we're addressing those questions, but we want to make this interactive and conversational. John, I know you said we provide our customers with a crosswalk with all those changes. One of the other questions that we did have is the ability to integrate with other systems when it comes to collecting and gathering the data. Are there any tips or tricks or ideas or capabilities, functionalities you can kind of speak to help the users out there?
Sure. I'll talk more at a high level because I'm not my boots aren't on the ground, and Zach can talk more technically. But if we think about any A&G solution, there's always data you need, likely from another solution. So some people may look at those as lookups, some people may look at them as integrations, but we need your member data, we need your provider data, we need your claim, we need your auth data in order for this solution to drive you through and make sure you're processing cases correctly, but also so you can populate your universes, right? So that's kind of that basic, almost requirement level of integration. And then you have more of your pre-purpose built platform integration. So if you think about Outlook, right? Who wants to print out an email or save an email and then load it into a system? Or same thing with attachments. OnBase, which the CureWorks platform is built on, has a direct integration with Office. So anything that is in your Outlook, if you utilize an email box for incoming case requests or even medical records, or allow people to submit cases through there, you can easily bring those into the solution through that direct integration. The other one's kind of outbound, right? So within that Office integration, we have built-in document correspondence generation. So we have all of the data we need, we have your existing templates, and at the right time in the case, we're automatically generating that acknowledgement letter in a Word format so that you can modify it if you want to, or you can even lock those down and then save it into your system and print it out. Now, if you want to take that one step further, depending on your organization's needs, we've integrated with I don't even want to count the amount of platforms, but whether it be a print vendor or a third-party integration engine, we see very commonly with Salesforce. Zach, I think you had some specific ones that you may have wanted to mention and how we worked through those.
Yeah, so when it comes to the integration, a big portion that John kind of alluded to was we're going to need some data from your lines of businesses to get into the universe. So things like the member data, getting the beneficiary or member's first name, last name, that new enrollee ID or member MBI. We want to make sure we're getting that data passed into our system. So when we actually are processing a appeals and grievances case and generating that universe for you, we have that appropriate data. And a few ways we've integrated that with our system is, like John was alluding to, Salesforce has been one of them, and their integration tool with MuleSoft. We were able to leverage that and bring that data over into our system. And then just if an ODBC connection, if we can make an ODBC connection to that system, we can actually pull that data in through a live lookup that way into our system. And then even just web services or just any type of SQL or database call, we can actually pull that information into our system to get all that data we need to properly fill the universe tables, being member data, claim authorization data, because we need those claim numbers and the diagnosis codes, and then your provider information so we can tell whether the provider is a contract provider or non-contract provider.
Nice. I know just recently we were asked by an organization that they were struggling with. They had their member services folks really resolving grievances on the front end, and they're having difficulties passing that information to the A&G team so that they can properly report those grievances in the universes. Can you guys, I don't know, like do you guys provide the ability to maybe allow a member service person to capture the information and then maybe create an entry or an inquiry in a system like Facets so that can then be created in the CureWorks database and tracked in the database? Is something that was one of the questions that was asked recently by an organization. Can you guys handle that?
Yes, that's actually really common. A lot of plans right now already have that software in place that their CSRs are using to jot down those inquiries, right? So whether they're using Salesforce or a homegrown app or whatever it may be, what we typically do in that space is for any one of those inquiries, we create a corresponding object or case within our solution and pass to that application back an identifier so that it creates a log or a link item so that as a CSR, I can do anything from open up a quick dashboard of that case to see the stats on it, or we can just pass the individual pieces of data back, things like the case status, when it's due, what the decision is, if we're awaiting anything. So that way they're not having to log into two systems. They're in their system that they use every single day, and they can gather that information quick with the customer or the member still on the phone.
Got it. And I know, Zach and John, you yourself have both kind of mentioned in some technical terms there. Can you just kind of speak to, say, the typical CureWorks customer and the level of knowledge, being the fact that we provide those crosswalks to our customers? What type of support or knowledge does an organization need to have, or somebody in the role, to be able to manage the CureWorks system? So maybe they don't have to rely on their IT, or maybe they do, because I think the one thing that I hear from customers and prospects that we speak to is that it's very challenging working with their IT department. The IT department is limited. They're kind of stretched to the max. So getting, prioritized and leaning on IT resources is always like, get in the back of the line, fill out the ticket. We have a list of enhancements to the current database. And if I heard you right, you said we provide those changes so customers make that themselves. Are we just giving those organizations more IT work that is just going to bottleneck the system, or can business analysts kind of make those changes?
Sure. Pat, you and I have heard and thrown this term around a lot recently, the citizen coder. So if I look at, the end user of a solution, and then I'm making sure I'm in frame here, the citizen coder at opposite ends of the spectrum, right? While not a true coder, while not someone like Zach, who builds out these great applications, anywhere within that middle range absolutely has the ability to make these changes. So everything is point and click when it comes to configuring your universes, right? If we need to change the label, we can do that. If we say, hey, this needs to switch in this order, or we need to remove a field, it's all point and click, and it has its own workflow, and it's a very logical process. So absolutely you can. And then if you think about other changes that are un-universe related, we need to make an update to a correspondence template. That is all built right into Microsoft Word. You can open up your template from Word, make a quick change, save it, and the next time someone generates it, it already has that update in it. So it is very easy to use, very easy to administrate.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of building on a low-code platform for this A&G solution, is those changes can be easily made. It doesn't have to be a technical developer. It can be a standard business user that has the tool available to make those changes. And actually, a good example for a universe change that one of our customers wanted to make for ODAG Table 10, it talks about the IRE and reporting on favorable or overturned IRE cases. So our solution pulls back those overturned IRE cases to populate that table. However, they interpret it that they want not just the favorable cases, but also the partially favorable cases, because since they're making an effectuation on that case, they want to see the data be populated in that table as well. So we were able to make that change with just a few clicks of the mouse, and now they're not only getting their favorable IRE cases, but they're partially favorable, and they'll be able to report on exactly what they want to see.
Got it. We had an incoming question here in the chat. How do we handle, or how do you handle recording the regulator dates and times?
Yeah, so there's a few ways or flavors of recording those dates and times. One, our system, when a case is being processed through our system, that we're able to populate those date and times at the time that we complete an action. So we can actually do that automatically for the end user, and they don't have to worry about populating that. However, some customers want to have a little bit more refined control over populating those date and times. So we have available like prompts to the end user to populate that date and time. So for an example, when a case decision was made on that date and time, or an oral notification was made and outreach to the member to let them know about the decision, there's ability to change just with the click of a button to see a prompt of that date and time, or they can manually enter in that date and time. So there's flexibility whether we want the system to do it automatically for them, or if the end user wants to a little more refinement and control and populate those date and times themselves.
Got it. I just think of the ability to interpret, from each organization to each, the interpretation may vary. And if I'm hearing you correctly, Zach, we're really giving the customer the ability to determine what their level of risk or their feeling of confident in the interpretation is that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everyone kind of views the CMS universe and reads all the descriptions and interprets it a little bit differently. I mean, that's why you see all these conferences going on all year long regarding the ODAG and CDAG, and these plans are getting together to kind of interpret or pick each other's brains on how they're interpreting the universe to how to populate this data. And when it comes with the date and times, which is kind of neat and something that you don't have to worry about within our solution, is once you populate that date and time and the universe field gets populated, we're going to do that conversion for you, so you don't have to try to populate the date and time of that in that special format of, was it year, month, day? We're gonna make that interpretation or that formatting change for you and populate the universe tables how CMS wants to view that data.
Got it. So as long as I'm using the CureWorks on the A&G application on the front end for my case intake, my decisions, and then I'm getting essentially those ODAG and CDAG tables built in with all of the conversions kind of being handled by the CureWorks solution.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and from the end user standpoint, they don't technically need to know that this certain field is populating the universe. They're just processing the case and making the decision that they know how to do. And then our system is going and taking that data and converting it into the appropriate universe tables at the right time.
Got it. So in theory, I can generate the universe on demand, literally with a push button at any given point in time.
Yep. Yeah, that universe table is always being populated, so you don't have to wait till the end of the year to start doing some mock audits or testing or auditing your own system. So you can do that, like you were saying, Pat, on demand, and you can look at that data and review that data at any given time.
Got it.
Pat, there's some.
So at the end of the year, it's not a rush to make sure you're ready for an audit. You can be monitoring that throughout the entire year to make sure that when the time comes, it's not a scramble. You've been ready for it since day one.
Pat, there was something you mentioned earlier that kind of triggered something for me. You said as long as you're utilizing the CureWorks solution for your intake and then actually the processing of it, you can get all of that reporting. And this kind of goes back to your integrations, as I was thinking that more and more. So we've installed and configured this application in a number of different plans that all have different needs. They all have their own different existing solutions. So whether or not you're utilizing CureWorks for the full spectrum end-to-end processing of the case, or you already have a document management system and we need to send it to there, or you outsource your printing, so we need to communicate with your print vendor, or you already have a reporting solution, or you already have your own letter generation, and you just want to use this solution as the intake so we can make sure we're classifying it correctly, and the actual processing, you can do that too. So while we do offer that full end-to-end solution, it is nice that it's almost like an a la carte, if you will, right? You don't have to utilize all of those fun, neat options if you already have an existing solution for that purpose in place.
Got it. So essentially, you're giving a lot of flexibility, and with that flexibility comes the ability to really own the system and not have to rely on those IT resources or maybe other software vendors or other folks within the organization to get your job done.
Yeah. And real quick, as far as that flexibility goes, I know we're on the topic of universes right now, but I always want to talk about all the solutions and give them all the attention, right? When we think about flexibility and we think about CMS, they're not very flexible. They want things done in a certain way. And it's always a big topic. And there's always a lot of conferences about it, but we don't hear very often is for commercial and Medicaid plans, right? They all have their own unique reporting requirements, and there's a lot of different ways they can be processed state to state or plan to plan. And if you think about our commercial and Medicaid solution, the one thing I just wanted to mention is there is that level of flexibility as part of that product that gives you complete control of how a case is handled, right? Whether or not you want to do an acknowledgement letter, they get extended, or it's auto forwarded, or timeframes and reminders and all that great stuff. It's included in that base level product. And when I don't mention it, I almost feel bad. So back to you.
Got it. Got it. Well, I know we're a minute or two over time here. Guys, thanks for sharing your insight, your information as it relates to the guideline changes and the proposed 2021. And we answered everybody's question who sent them in the chat. If for some reason we missed anything, by all means, just reach out to us. We'll probably put a blog article out there just kind of highlighting the questions and answers that were shared today. And before we go, I just wanted to give another plug to another upcoming conference that was originally scheduled for earlier this year in Nashville. Will White and Jen and the folks at IEN Inside Exchange are putting on another conference very similar to the RISE conference. This is going to be a virtual online conference held August 25th through the 27th. So if you're interested in networking, in speaking more with the CureWorks team, or just meeting other folks in your role, I highly encourage you to attend this. It's a great conference, a great community of users. And with that, I don't see any other questions. So John, Zach, thanks for your time today. And we hope to see you at the Inside Exchange conference in August.
Yeah, thanks, Pat.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.